Today, we're diving deep into Genesis chapter 2. Now, you might think of it as just an ancient story, but we're going to look at it as something so much more, the original blueprint for humanity. It's a text that really gets to the heart of who we are and what we were made for.
So, let's jump right in with the biggest questions of all. Who am I? Why am I here? According to this chapter, the answer isn't some big mystery. It's actually right there in our origin story. The text kicks things off by defining our unique dual nature. And honestly, if you can grasp this one idea, it's the key that unlocks everything else that follows.
We get this simple but wow, incredibly powerful formula. A human being, what the text calls a living being, is this amazing combination of the earthly and the divine. Think about it. We're formed from the dust of the ground, but we're animated by the very breath of God.
This duality is just central to who we are. On one hand, the dust connects us to all of creation. It keeps us humble, reminds us that we have limits, but on the other hand, God's breath gives us this incredible dignity, a spiritual life, and this unique ability to actually have a relationship with our Creator. So we're both humble and dignified. We're finite, yet we're capable of touching the infinite.
And this leads to a really crucial idea in the text, the concept of a designated place. Our source material calls this our jari. See, we weren't just created and then left to wander around. No, we were intentionally placed. And that word placed is huge. It means we were created with a specific purpose and a very clear responsibility.
Okay, so if we have a place, what was that place? Well, let's take a closer look at the Garden of Eden, because it was so much more than just a pretty park.
You see, Eden is shown to be a sanctuary, the place where God's own presence dwelt on earth. It was a space of perfect provision, just overflowing with life. It was designed for a deep, personal relationship with God, and from that relationship came a very clear mission.
And get this is where it gets really amazing. Humanity's original mission, our work, wasn't supposed to be toil. It was actually a form of worship. The command to work it and take care of it uses the exact same Hebrew words used to describe the sacred duties of priests serving in God's holy sanctuary. How cool is that? Humanity's role was to be the priest of creation.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that work itself was originally a blessing. It was a gift, a dignified way for us to partner with God in caring for His world and to participate in His own creative work.
All right, now let's get to the part of the garden that everybody knows about, and maybe the part that's most misunderstood, that one single rule that God established.
And it's a totally fair question, right? Why would you put a forbidden tree in a perfect place? Was it some kind of trap? Well, the text suggests it was something else entirely. That boundary wasn't about restriction. It was actually a vital part of the relationship.
You see, that tree had a huge job to do. It was a physical reminder to acknowledge God as the source of all life and wisdom. It helps show that real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's about thriving within God's good design. This made obedience a real choice, one that could come from love and trust, not just robotic programming. It was, in essence, the very first covenant, a relational promise.
But here's the thing. Even in this perfect sanctuary, with a clear purpose and a relationship with God, the blueprint still wasn't finished. Because for the very first time, God Himself says that something is not good.
And that one statement, wow, it tells us something fundamental about ourselves. We are deeply, fundamentally relational beings. We weren't made for isolation. We were made for community. The mission God gave us was always meant to be shared.
Now that word helper can really trip people up. It's so easy to get the wrong idea from the English translation, to think it means something like an assistant or a subordinate. But if you look at the original Hebrew, you find a meaning that is so much deeper and way more powerful.
Okay, let's geek out on the Hebrew for just a second because this is awesome. The term is ezer kenegdo. The word ezer, translated helper, is actually a word of incredible strength. In the Old Testament, it's used over and over again to describe God Himself as Israel's rescuer. And kenegdo means corresponding to or facing as an equal. So far from meaning a lesser assistant, this term describes a strong, essential, and totally equal partner.
So, the creation of this equal partner brings us to the real climax of the chapter, the formation of the very first human community. And this sets the template for everything that follows.
And Adam's reaction when he sees the woman, it's not just, oh hey, it's the first poem in the entire Bible. It's this spontaneous explosion of joy and recognition and relief. He sees his other half, someone who corresponds to him perfectly.
And this is what it all builds to, the principle of one flesh.
And this means a complete, total unity. Not just physical, but spiritual, emotional, everything. It's a covenant that creates a brand new whole entity, and it finally fulfills our design as relational beings made for community.
Now, of course, we all know how this part of the story goes. This original, perfect blueprint, it gets shattered. The first humans abandoned their place, their Jerry of trust and obedience. The first Adam was silent in the face of temptation, and he disobeyed in a garden. But the story doesn't end there. The sources we're looking at draw this powerful contrast with the last Adam, Jesus, who spoke God's word, who held fast to his Jerry of obedience in another garden, Gethsemane, and who ultimately fulfilled the mission the first Adam left behind.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty big question to think about. The blueprint in Genesis 2 shows us the purpose, the identity, and the relationships we were designed for. Everything that was lost. But the story of the last Adam shows us how that place can be restored. So the question for each of us then is this: are we choosing to stand in it?